You feel it the moment it happens. The air tightens. Eyes shift. A pause stretches longer than it should. You corrected them. Publicly. It felt clean, precise, justified. But something slips out of your control. Their face hardens for half a second. Too fast for apology. Too slow to miss. The room doesn't rally behind you. It goes quiet. Not respectful. Watchful. You sense it but can't name it yet. A subtle withdrawal. A recalibration you weren't invited to. You keep talking, trying to smooth it over. Explaining. Clarifying. But the damage is already complete. They nod. They smile. They agree. And something inside them locks shut. You don't notice the shift immediately. Authority doesn't collapse loudly. It erodes silently. From this moment on, they stop offering information. They stop aligning instinctively. They start remembering. Every future interaction carries a residue. Not open conflict, something colder. You didn't lose because you were wrong. You lost because you exposed. You believed correctness would protect you. That truth spoken aloud commands respect. Instead, the room changed sides without saying so. Not toward them, away from you. And the most dangerous part, they will never confront you about it. They will wait. They will comply. They will smile. And when the moment comes, when leverage quietly shifts, you will wonder when control slipped from your hands. It already has. You were taught that correcting someone openly is honesty, that it signals strength, integrity, leadership. You believe that if something was wrong, it should be fixed immediately, in front of everyone, so the standards stayed high. That belief felt moral, clean, responsible, and you paid for it. You did what good leaders are praised for doing, and instead of loyalty, you felt resistance. Instead of respect, distance. Instead of alignment, subtle sabotage. You were promised authority. You received hostility. The myth says people value truth more than pride. Reality does not. The myth says competence earns obedience. Reality rewards emotional safety. You followed the rule exactly as it was taught. Speak up. Correct errors. Don't let things slide. But the system you operate in doesn't care about your intentions. It only responds to impact. Psychology doesn't reward fairness. It rewards face preservation. The moment you corrected them publicly, the focus shifted, not to the mistake, to humiliation. Their nervous system didn't register your accuracy. It registered threat. And once threat is perceived, hierarchy collapses. Not openly, internally. From that moment on, your authority becomes something to resist, not follow. Not because they are immoral, because they are human. Nature doesn't reward virtue. It rewards alignment with instinct. Social systems don't protect the right person. They protect the intact ego. You weren't punished for being wrong. You were punished for believing correctness mattered more than control. That belief feels noble, but nobility has never been a source of power. Alignment with reality has. This pattern isn't new, it isn't personal, and it isn't accidental. Centuries ago, strategists noticed something unsettling and deliberately stopped teaching it to moralists. Machiavelli named it without apology. He observed that authority is not preserved by being right, but by being unchallenged. And public correction creates challenge instantly. Not because of the error, because of exposure. In courts, armies, and councils, leaders who humiliated subordinates openly didn't face rebellion immediately. They faced something worse. Invisible opposition. Compliance without loyalty. Agreement without alignment. Machiavelli's insight was simple and uncomfortable. People will forgive mistakes, but they will not forgive being stripped of dignity in front of witnesses. Modern psychology confirms it. Public embarrassment activates the same threat circuits as physical danger. The brain stops processing logic and starts tracking revenge, avoidance, or sabotage. This truth is rarely spoken aloud because it sounds cruel. It offends the ideal that reason governs behavior. But power has never belonged to ideals. It belongs to those who understand incentives. Correction, when done publicly, stops being instructional. It becomes dominance signaling. And dominance signaling invites challenge. The strongest leaders across history understood this instinctively. They corrected in private. They preserved face in public. Not out of kindness, out of precision. They knew that authority is fragile. It doesn't crack under opposition. It dissolves under resentment. This knowledge feels forbidden because it forces you to choose control over righteousness, stability over validation. But power is not interested in your comfort. It is interested in outcomes. And the outcome of public correction is not order. It is delayed resistance. Understanding this doesn't make you manipulative. It makes you aligned with reality. You're tired of feeling the tension afterward, the quiet pushback you can't call out without sounding paranoid, the sense that people comply, but something essential is missing. You replay the moment later, wondering why it felt wrong, even though you were right. No one teaches you how exhausting it is to be correct and still lose influence. How draining it is to uphold standards while slowly bleeding authority. You feel the contradiction, but don't have language for it. You're doing what should work, yet the system resists you. That confusion creates doubt, not in others, in yourself. You start questioning your instincts, over-explaining, softening, or swinging in the opposite direction and becoming harsher. Neither works, because the problem was never your standards. It was the frame. You were operating inside a lie that says respect comes from exposure, from calling things out, from making examples. What you actually need is leverage without friction, correction without collision, control without noise. This is where most people either harden into tyrants or collapse into appeasers. Both paths destroy authority. There is another option, not kinder, not crueler, cleaner. It requires unlearning reflexes you were rewarded for early on. It requires restraint where your ego wants release. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You will start noticing who corrects publicly and loses the room, and who says almost nothing, yet is obeyed. The exhaustion you feel isn't from leadership. It's from fighting human psychology. That fight ends when you stop trying to win moments and start designing outcomes. What comes next isn't motivation. It's a set of perceptions that permanently change how people respond to you. There are 3 principles you are about to see. Not techniques, not communication tips, not social tricks. They are shifts in how power moves through human systems. Once these are understood, you stop reacting to moments and start shaping environments. People behave differently around you without being told to. These principles don't add anything to you. They remove errors. Each one strips away a reflex that leaks authority without you noticing. Each one replaces it with restraint that compounds influence over time. This is not about being quieter, or nicer, or indirect. It is about precision. You will recognize each principle because you've already felt its absence. In rooms where respect vanished, the second someone was exposed. In hierarchies that collapsed not from rebellion, but from silent erosion. The first principle explains why public correction always costs more than it gains. The second explains how private correction increases authority instead of diminishing it. The third explains how composure, not dominance, freezes hierarchy in your favor. These are not learned quickly. They are embodied slowly. And once embodied, people stop testing you. Not because you threaten them, because there is nothing to push against. Understand this clearly. These principles do not make you softer. They make you unreadable. They do not remove standards. They enforce them without spectacle. Most people never grasp this because they confuse power with expression. And expression is noisy. What you're about to step into is quieter, more stable, and far harder to challenge. This is not about winning arguments. It's about never needing them. The first truth is uncomfortable because it contradicts instinct. Public correction always costs authority, even when it feels justified. Think of authority like a currency system. Every public exposure devalues it, not instantly, cumulatively. When you correct someone in front of others, you spend influence for momentary clarity. You get compliance, but you lose credit. Your old behavior was reactive. A mistake appeared. You fixed it immediately. Out loud, visible. It felt efficient, decisive. The new behavior is delayed and invisible. You note the error. You say nothing in the moment. You let the system continue undisturbed. This restraint isn't weakness. It's interest-bearing discipline. Others feel the difference immediately. They don't feel attacked. They feel watched. When correction comes later, in private, it lands cleanly. No audience. No defense. No ego protecting itself. In that space, accountability sticks. Public correction turns the group into a courtroom. Private correction turns it into a calibration. The response shifts. People don't comply to avoid embarrassment. They adjust to maintain alignment with you. Authority increases not because you asserted it, but because you didn't need to. This principle works because humans protect identity before accuracy. When identity is safe, correction is absorbed. When identity is threatened, it is resisted. The discipline required here is silence when your ego wants recognition. That restraint is what converts control from temporary to structural. You stop leaking power in moments that feel small, but decide hierarchy long-term. The second truth is quieter, and that's why it works. Correction gains force when it happens offstage. Think of hierarchy like pressure in a sealed system. When you puncture it publicly, energy escapes. When you contain it, pressure builds. Your old behavior relied on visibility. You corrected so others would see the standard enforced. You wanted the system to know you were in control. What actually happened was the opposite. The spectacle shifted attention from the standard to the relationship between you and the person you exposed. Now the group isn't thinking about correctness. They're tracking tension. A new behavior removes the audience entirely. No witnesses. No performance. When correction happens privately, something changes in the other person's nervous system. They don't feel attacked. They feel selected. Not shamed, chosen. That alone preserves dignity. And dignity is what keeps people aligned even when they disagree. In private, defenses drop. There's no need to save face. No need to counterattack. Your words land heavier because they don't compete with ego survival. Others sense this pattern, even if they never see it. They notice mistakes get fixed. They notice standards hold, but they never see friction. That absence becomes your signature. People begin to assume you handle things quietly, decisively. They stop testing boundaries because boundaries feel solid, not performative. This isn't secrecy, it's containment. Power grows when others feel intact around you, yet still adjusted by you. The discipline here is resisting the urge to demonstrate authority. Demonstration is for those who don't have it. Those who do, correct without witnesses, and let the results speak where their voice does not. The third truth completes the structure. Composure in public is what freezes hierarchy. Imagine authority as gravity. It doesn't announce itself. It simply holds. Your old pattern reacted to disruption. A mistake appeared, and your body moved first. Voice, tone, expression. That reaction told the room something you didn't intend. That the error pulled you out of center. The new behavior is stillness. When something goes wrong in public, you remain composed. You don't correct. You don't explain. You don't signal irritation. You acknowledge, if needed, and move on. This does two things simultaneously. It denies the error power over the moment, and it denies others a signal to challenge. People read emotional regulation as dominance. Not volume, not sharpness. When you stay calm, the system interprets it as, this is handled, no threat here. Later, correction happens quietly, but publicly, order remains unbroken. This is how leaders avoid becoming reactive nodes. They don't absorb chaos. They contain it. Others adjust automatically. They become more careful, more attentive, because the standard is stable, not explosive. The discipline here is mastery over impulse. Your need to correct immediately is emotional, not strategic. Once that impulse is governed, you stop being dragged into moments and start controlling pacing. Hierarchy solidifies not because you enforced it, but because nothing was allowed to disturb it. At this stage, something subtle has already shifted, not in others, in you. There are people who react to moments, and people who shape the environment moments happen inside. You are moving from the first category into the second. Most people live unconsciously inside hierarchy. They correct to feel equal. They expose to feel superior. They speak to discharge emotion. That is the reactive position. The sovereign position is quieter. It doesn't need to be seen correcting to be felt guiding. When you stop correcting publicly, you stop competing. You exit the need to prove awareness. You step above the moment instead of into it. Others sense this immediately. Not intellectually, physiologically. They begin to feel you as fixed point rather than participant. Someone who observes first, acts later, never rushes. This is the difference between someone who needs compliance and someone who naturally receives it. Your old identity was tied to vigilance, catching errors, maintaining standards through exposure. That identity keeps you busy but never powerful. The new identity is containment. You allow things to appear without reacting to them. You let errors reveal patterns. You let people show themselves. That places you higher in the hierarchy without saying so. Reactive people correct downward or sideways. Grounded people correct from above, privately, precisely. As this identity stabilizes, others unconsciously adapt. They self-correct more. They bring fewer problems to the surface. They hesitate before testing limits. Not because you are feared, because you are unreadable. This isn't a role you perform. It's a position you occupy. And once occupied, it's difficult to dislodge. Here is the next point, the psychological twist. None of what you've learned so far is about controlling others. Correction in private, composure in public, restraint instead of reaction. These are not levers on other people. The real power is over yourself. It is your impulses, not theirs, that decide outcomes. It is your timing, not their mistakes, that sets hierarchy. It is your perception, not their performance, that determines respect. Public correction creates the illusion of authority. Composure in private creates the reality. The twist is that the audience never needed to change. You did. Your ego wants to assert. Your instincts want to fix. Your need for recognition demands exposure. All of that, unchecked, leaks authority. The principles weren't tools to bend others. They were tools to align your mind with reality. By mastering internal control, you neutralize resentment before it arises. You preserve influence before opposition can form. You shape outcomes by withholding reaction, not by imposing action. This is the uncomfortable truth. External order is a reflection of internal order. You cannot force hierarchy externally without first governing the impulses that react to errors, threats, and insults. Mastery of self is invisible, yet it produces the most visible results. Those who focus on controlling others never understand this. They fight battles that don't exist. They fracture authority that could have been solid. You have been preparing for this shift without realizing it. Now you see why restraint, patience, and composure are not weaknesses. They are your strongest weapons.